welcome to another show with me, Carmel Fisher, on the Harvest Podcast. We are excited to have a discussion today with Mr. Kerry Lutz, owner of FSN, better known as Financial Survival Network, but also recovering attorney, serial entrepreneur, author, and guest, stand-up comedian. What an exciting list of titles, Mr. Kerry Lutz. Welcome, firstly, and please tell us how you managed to capture all those titles, make time for them all, hinting at your background and how you got here.
Yeah, well, as Steve Jobs said in the commencement address to Stanford, it's like your life doesn't make any sense when you're living it. It's only when you look back that you can connect the dots. And you grew up like in a bedroom community outside of New York, and as a not a motivated student. I guess that's
Yeah.
a nice way of saying somebody who couldn't care less about school or had no interest in it. To me, every day of school was torture. And hey, eventually went to college because that's what everybody did in my town. And then worked in the family business for a few years and decided it would be real helpful to become an attorney since I was dealing with attorneys all day long. And, from there, it just eventually sold that company off, practiced law, helped startup companies, uh, did a number of deals, and one day was just fed up with right after the collapse, um, the great financial collapse of '08 and '09. Said, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be I want to be a podcaster because podcasting had just come out. I always thought I love radio. I love spoken communication. And one day I'll buy a radio station. And instead, I started a podcast because it was a lot cheaper. And you can reach more people in a podcast than you can in any radio station in America. And here I am. So did some stand-up comedy along the way because I just felt like I've been to an open mic. I could do it better than what they were doing. And hey, 14 years later, still podcasting, 9,000 episodes plus and counting.
Fantastic. And, I always believe that we are multidimensional people. There's no reason why you cannot entertain all aspects of yourself in the ways that you're doing. How do you bring all of those aspects of yourself into the Financial Survival Network? And what really motivated you to create this platform that is really dedicated to helping people to adapt, to thrive in this new economy, as you mentioned, post 2008 crisis?
Well, I'm a lifelong learner. My father was before him, and his father probably was before him. And, you always need to be growing because if you're not growing, in my opinion, you're dying, whether that's going to the gym, learning a new language, which I'm doing now. So I felt like after the financial collapse, I'd always been into Austrian economics from the time I was in college and discovered this trove of Austrian economic literature in the library at Pace University that was kind of hidden away. And I read all these books, Ludwig von Mises, and kind of put it in the back burner, thinking, I know this economy is fake. I know it's all going to blow up, but it all seems to be going well through the '80s, '90s, and most of the early 2000s. And then the financial collapse happened. I realized the Austrians were right. You can only print your way to prosperity so many times when it starts losing its effect and causes all sorts of problems that you never thought about. And at that point, I said, people aren't getting true information. They're not getting accurate information. I want to try to create a platform where you could get an alternative view on what was really happening with the economy. And then I just started it up and kind of just took off from there.
Excellent. So you mentioned, the ocean economics and this very different approach that you're now instilling in the way you handle business and perhaps your own investments and economic analysis. How has it influenced the way you're doing it? And, just to add to that, how do you make sure people actually ingest this information in this world of overload?
Well, people won't change their viewpoint, their paradigm, their view of the universe, of the world, until they have to. That's generally the way it works because it's not easy to change your perspective on life. It's not something that most of you out there are gonna want to do if you don't have to. It causes you problems, causes you uncertainty, insecurity. So, the world will come around when they realize there's no other choice. One of two things will happen. We'll become these enlightened beings who realize we're all connected, and anything we do to hurt someone else hurts ourselves and hurts everyone, and therefore we will become enlightened and to the point where honesty, everyone is honest, everyone acts for the greater good. Until that happens, the best thing we can do is have a free market economy where people pursue their own interests legally and ethically and do no harm and improve the state of the world. That's the way the state of the world has improved. It hasn't been through government. It's been through free markets that produce enough revenue so then government could do things like build sewers and water systems and such. The government in itself doesn't create wealth. It just allocates it, takes it from the populace, whether it's in the form of taxation or borrowing money or printing it out of thin air. So until we become these selfless beings who exist more for the benefit of others than for ourselves, and everyone buys into this, the free market economy is the best way to go about it. And it's been proven over and over again. More importantly, the socialist economy, even if you don't buy into free markets, the proven failure of socialist economies is universal. It's never worked. It never can work. Because until we become these selfless beings, you are always going to pursue your own self-interest for the benefit of yourself and your family and your community. It's just the way it is.
Sure, but in my perspective, I believe that can be twofold, right? It does not have to be that black and white. I believe, sure, we are in a free economy, but do we need to be ruthless and not take people's, interest into account as much as our own? When we can find the happy balance, maybe it's an idealist speaking here, but I don't believe personally that there's the free market and there's selflessness. I believe selflessness can coexist within the realms of a free market.
Here's the problem. Okay. So I totally agree with you. I don't believe in competition. I believe in co-opetition. I do agree with what you're saying. It doesn't have to be a slugfest. May the strongest win. Okay. The problem is when you start talking about concepts like fairness, who's going to be the arbiter? Who's to decide whether something's fair or unfair? In certain instances, you got to let the market decide it. All right. Maybe you think that gasoline should be $1 a gallon. I mean, wouldn't that be wonderful? However, it can't be produced that cheaply, but you don't think it's fair that gasoline is $5 a gallon, and you're going to see to it that they're going to produce it at $1 a gallon. What's going to happen to all those producers? They're going to go out of business. And then the government's going to have to step in to produce the gasoline at a loss because the market couldn't do it. So on the one hand, yes, government should be a referee, a unbiased referee. Purpose of government is to, number one, protect the free market, the integrity of the free market. Number two, to peaceably settle disputes among its inhabitants through hopefully an effective court system, which we certainly don't have now. Number three is to protect from enemies within and without. And, in those core functions, printing money is not one of them.
In your many thousands of podcasts, you've had the great opportunity of interviewing luminaries like Peter Schiff, Kerry Dent, and Martin Armstrong. Are there any significant, impactful insights that ranged across those interviews that you can highlight? Or if not, what was the most impactful insight you did gain from those?
So from like Martin Armstrong, I never viewed the economy as a global economy, and not so much from the point of, we buy computers from China, we buy shoes from Italy, and, clothes from Vietnam, but it's a question of the flow of funds. Money flows throughout the world, and the flow of funds and where it's flowing to has more impact than many other factors that we've been led to believe. You know, it's it's not just the shadowy hand of the market, as Adam Smith said, but it's the shadowy hand on the keyboard sending money to this place, investing in this market. Investing's global flow of funds will and liquidity will really win out more so than any other factor. So that's that's what I learned from Martin Armstrong. And I've learned that nobody really knows what the future is going to be. You think you might know, but you really don't know because, as that great philosopher and luminary Yogi Berra once said, prediction is very hard, especially about the future.
For sure. Very interesting. So, economic and investment concepts can be very convoluted and not always digestible. How do you go about distilling these complexities into, digestible insights for your audience on the financial survival network?
Well, so I view my role as a messenger. Okay. And there was once a movie done about podcasting called The Messengers. So my function is to bring you the information, not to help you decide, in my opinion, to help you decide by giving you the information. What you do with it, whether you accept it or reject it, not up to me. I have no part in that. One thing I have found in life, though, and not for my podcast, is the ability to manage or to handle ambiguous thoughts or conflicting thoughts, beliefs at the same time gives you a real advantage in anything you do. Because when you see things black and white, you might be seeing black, but it's white, or you might be seeing white, but it's black, but you think you know the truth and you don't. And how many times, Carmel, do you have a word? You see a word, happens less to me, I'm older than you, but you see a word that you've been pronouncing incorrectly your entire life. And it kind of freaks you out because you realize that you had a belief about something and it's a very simple belief here. You believe this word was pronounced a certain way and it wasn't, or it was meant a certain thing and it didn't. So the ability to hold two ambiguous thoughts in your mind at the same time is the greatest critical analytical skill you can have. So I can listen to a liberal and I can listen to a conservative, just to give an example, and assume that they're both right and they're both wrong without deciding which way I think it is. And I let the facts guide me in the right direction.
100%. And I can attest to this being South African in an American place where English is our first language, both countries, and yet so many words that I would say or have a reference or meaning to could be very different. And I've actually come across that. So absolutely just keeping space for ambiguities and allowing not always to have the answers as cut and dry as we'd love to have them most times. Now, in the financial media space, you've also touched on the mining industry. Can you talk to us more about that space, that experience, and how it's informed your perspective on the commodities markets?
So one area where my thoughts have changed. I used to believe, they changed back and forth. I used to believe that all the wealth was coming from intellectual property. And then I kind of discovered the mining space and I realized that no other wealth is possible without the mining space, without the mining industry. Everything we're speaking on, everything we're doing, our modern civilization is all built upon the extractive industries. That's it. Taking stuff from the ground and making it into something else, refining it. So for a while, I thought that really the only true wealth comes from the ground. But now I've switched back. I look at, Tesla, I look at AI, all these things. Yeah, it came from the ground. But, once upon a time, the natives, the indigenous people, had the United States totally in their grasp. And basically, I'm not downgrading or denigrating their civilization. They had advanced cultures, but, you know, they never really created permanency in their lives. They were moving from place to place, non-permanent structures, with the exception of the ones that lived in pueblos. So extractive industries, mining, essential, but without the human capital, the knowledge, the intelligence, uh, it really ain't worth much. Somebody had to figure out that gold was worth something before it became worth something. It wasn't worth anything until somebody figured out it was worth something.
So leading to this question would be, as an investor and consultant, all about intelligence based, what are some of the key factors that you use to help you evaluate and assess opportunities in the mining sector?
So this is where experience as an attorney and a marketing person. I was born literally marketing. Um, you know, it's yes, there's a reality, but how the world perceives the reality of who you are really determines where you go. And so many really good companies have good prospects, but they just don't know how to package themselves, how to make your value proposition, your business look good to others. Now you can use this to ill. I mean, I've been a victim of it many times. I've seen it many times where, people just get conned, they get taken in. And but I feel like ethically communicating your message in the most positive terms possible and the most appealing terms possible that connect with the people you want to reach and you want to invest or do business with is crucial. And this is where business has really become so much more sophisticated and advanced from back in the 1800s, where it was a lot more what you alluded to of a free for all, every person from themselves, get what you can and don't worry about the rest. But, now the message, the way we interact, the way we connect, it's so much different. And it's not limited to the way it once was. So reputation is important, but presenting your reputation is as important as your reputation.
So, in terms of changes and disruptions, what are some of the most significant ones that you've witnessed in the mining sector over the course of your career, right? That has really impacted companies, but also speak to those successful companies who have adapted to those shifts in a way that has not kind of crumbled them.
So, it's so interesting because I love the mining space. I love the concept that you could take this thing of dirt and turn it into something that's worth billions of dollars that nobody knew about. But with all the regulation, with all the requirements, it's been systematized, but it takes so long to actually bring a mine online. Copper mine could take 10 to 20 years. And the very same people that want to electrify everything are the ones that fight the mining industry tooth and nail to stop them from developing. And now I think mining has gotten to the point, best practices, where it is the least invasive that it has ever been. The best practices, the regard for the ecology, for the environment has never been greater. And this is the time to loosen up the reins on the industry, not let them run free for all, but we need these critical metals and minerals more than we've ever needed them, just on the basis of population expansion alone. So policies need to be created to allow these companies to exploit the resources in a responsible, ethically, and I'm not talking ESG here, I'm talking just as we are stewards of the planet for generations yet to come. And I think we've gotten to the point where most of the companies that are in the space know this, and we need to accelerate the development because humanity depends on this. Like I said, intelligence alone isn't going to solve the problems of the world. We need resources combined with intelligence to do it. The converse of what I said before, that the resources are worthless without the intelligence, but the intelligence is worthless without the resources. Got to come to a wake up moment here, and the whole world needs to do it. I'm not talking China, where they couldn't care less about anything. They need to be reined in and forced to become responsible stewards. But the Canadians, the Australians, and to a somewhat an extent, the Americans, there's a respect now for the environment that when I was growing up, we never had.
And what does that look like to you? Loosening up these policies. What specifics would you vouch for or put
Well,
your name to, just to get a little more specific on that?
yeah, like it's just like a large portion of a mine plan is to reclaim it. You got 85 gazillion government approvals to get a mine through. All right. You need one centralized place, and you need, I mean, the former president kind of set this in motion with highway projects and such. You need one person to go to who's responsible for the project, and you need a deadline where they have to process everything, and you need to cut down on the application size. To build a highway or redo a highway in the US and get federal money was a 10-year process and thousands of pages, right? Under the former administration, they said, all right, if it's this type of action, 100-page maximum. If it's this, 300 pages. No ifs, ands, or buts, because a lot of these industries and these regulators, they exist at the behest of the consultancy class who are there just to rake in money off the project and not add any value. And it's the same in the financial sector as well. There was once a major fraud in the mining industry. Canada, which is the basic capital of mining industry, set about a series of procedures to help avoid that type of fraud from ever happening again. And as a result, they've slowed down these projects by 5 years. And that's not good for the world, not good for the industry. It's not good for the average person because it winds up making everything you buy more costly. And a lot of times that cost is made up for in a decrease in quality, cutting corners elsewhere.
Understood. So as a serial entrepreneur yourself, Kerry, what advice would you give to listeners that are looking to start their own businesses, that are in the teething phases of those businesses? How would you say that they should navigate the challenges of the modern economy?
Okay, so if you haven't done a business before, you need to talk to somebody who has, and you need guidance because it's not just, it doesn't just come intuitively, whether it's insurance, incorporation, all of these things. You need like a Sherpa to guide you through the process. Could be your lawyer, accountant, both. And you need to have some type of plan. Now, the best thing is, Carmel, with Chat GPT, you say, I'm setting up a new business in this sector. What do I do? It'll give you a list of things, and they're actually pretty good. I was talking with somebody that has a nonprofit theater in Connecticut, and she was a bit miffed about what to do, how to get the thing moving forward. A really bright lady, very successful. So I said, you know what? Let's ask ChatGPT. So I said, we got a nonprofit theater. It's classic Depression era architecture. It's in such and such place, and we want to maximize its potential. What do we do? And it spit out like a 10-page plan on what to do. And you could get more specific. When it does a section, you could tell it, think about these factors and do it. So use the AI use people as mentors and as guides along the way. And after failures, I've realized, I have to take a wait and see. I can get excited, but don't inflate your expectations. And the other thing is never be afraid to fail. All success is built upon failure. Whatever you're doing, whether you're learning something, whether you're teaching something, your business, your career, it's all built on failure. If you never failed, you'd never succeed. And I feel like in our society now, with these helicopter moms, failure is a fate worse than death. And, failure is essential. Just because you failed at something doesn't make you a failure, though. And I think that's how failure has been presented, particularly in the West now.
Absolutely true. Yeah, trial and error, and then you learn, you pivot and do better next time. From an investor perspective, now obviously investors too need to adapt to the shifting economic landscape. Are there any blind spots or misconceptions that you think's preventing them from making that adaptation to the new economic landscape?
Well, I would say that the belief that somebody else can spend your money better than you. You need advice, you need knowledge, you need to get it. And sometimes these advisors are really amazing. I know a lot of them who are, and I put a lot of credence in. But you need to be able to think out of the box, and you need to change your viewpoint. Change is scary to people. It's scary to me at times, but change is to use that cliche, change is the only constant in life, right?
I couldn't agree more. And oftentimes we have like you said, filters up, before we've even given anything a chance. You've got your limiting beliefs about it, about a person, before you've even penetrated that surface. And I think you just do a loss to yourself, to your point. Keep adapting. This is the nature of the beast. It's the world we live in, and it's becoming more and more relevant and prevalent as we go along. Now, there's a quote I see about separating truth from governmental inspired economic fantasy. Please speak to me about that quote and the role that critical thinking obviously plays in financial survival and prosperity.
Yeah. Critical thinking, like I said, most important thing, the ability to think. They can't teach it in school, and it's something you have to learn on your own. Conformity is kind of the enemy of critical thought. So the government paints one picture, the reality is different. We have this problem now called inflation. Well, I have a few years on you. I lived through the last bout of inflation in the 70s and 80s, so I know a little something about it because I've studied it. And it's not isolated, it's cyclical. It goes in waves, and generally it's impossible to just shut it down once it starts. So thinking about that, the government presents one picture, but they keep changing their measurement, but they keep presenting the same number, even though they've changed their measurement dramatically over the past 50 years. So, there's the government rate of inflation as they measure it now. But if you use the same measurements 40 years ago, well, the measurement was totally different. So the number is not comparable. So, it's a way for the government to paint a better picture, a prettier picture for the people, and to actually have to make less additional payments for programs like Social Security that are inflation adjusted.
There's a whole host of global uncertainty and geopolitical tensions. Now, investors and entrepreneurs need to position themselves in a way to navigate the challenges. Again, how can you help them in this moment by giving them three main ideas to consider to make sure that they're protecting themselves and putting themselves in the best position to navigate these challenges?
Okay, so I heard it from a woman from Old Money, and she said, never assume that the past concepts, the past investments are going to work in the future, because odds are they won't. And, the stock market's been this amazing generator of wealth for some, especially Wall Street, and not so much for others. So, once upon a time, it was buy and hold. We don't really adhere to that. I would say cryptocurrencies have the potential to be the complete game changer, but maybe not in the positive way. So always have to be open to new concepts. I wish I had been open to crypto 15 years ago. I'd be retired and sipping on my margarita in Tahiti now, but I didn't do it. I don't regret not having done it, only in the abstract. I mean, my life's pretty good. I maybe be a little better. It's like hitting the lottery. Don't try to win the lottery when you're investing. Just try to generate an above inflation return. All right. Real estate is always going to be the best way to get there, but not necessarily the easiest. You have to have the right temperament to be a real estate investor. Some of the best real estate investors I know are some of the cheapest people on the planet. And that is important when it comes to real estate, because all those dollars that you don't put in, that you save, up your return. Yeah, obviously you can take that to extremes, not a good thing. But it's always okay. Final concept, always okay to live beneath your means. It's preferable. All right. Savings and investment, it's all it is from an economic standpoint is deferred consumption. So I don't buy a bag of M&Ms today so that my blood sugar is not going to spike and I'm not going to wind up a diabetic. I don't put the expensive trip on the cards. I just decide that a staycation is fine and it'll work, and that money can be put to work. You don't want to defer all your pleasure, all your consumption. That's called being a miser or frugal or cheap. But a certain measure of your consumption should be deferred. So, because life's uncertain, you never know what's going to blow up next. So you need to always be ahead of the game, because it's easy to wind up behind the game very quickly.
Very wise words. Kerry, where can our viewers, listeners find more resources on your knowledge base? Lead us to your books you've written, your podcast, sure. Anywhere you're leaving your mark.
Hey, just go over to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. I have another site, inflation.cafe. Everything you need to know is there, entire archive. You might think I'm a moron. You might think I'm a genius. It's probably somewhere in between. But I am excellent at research and providing you valuable information that can potentially make a life change or make a difference in your life.
Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful discussion. I've learned so much about you and the Financial Survival Network and all your little nuggets of wisdom. I'm Carmel Fisher and you're watching The Harvest Podcast.
That's it for The Harvest, available everywhere you listen to podcasts.